Okay, to the working men and women of the Thornton factory. This is one of Lenin's earliest writings. It was first published in 1895. Let's see. So maybe some context on this. The leaflet to the working men and women of the Thornton factory was written after November 7, 1895, in connection with the strike of about 500 weavers that broke out on November 6 against bad conditions and the new oppressive measures introduced by the factory management. The strike was directed by the St. Petersburg League of Struggle for the emancipation of the working class. Before the strike broke out, the League of Struggle issued a leaflet written by G.M. Kizhanishevsky, I'm definitely probably saying that wrong, containing the weavers' demands, but so far it has not been possible to find a copy of it. Lenin's leaflet was issued several days later and circulated in the factory when the strike was over. The facts about the workers' conditions were carefully collected by Lenin himself. The leaflet was mimeographed in the spring of 1896, was reprinted abroad in number 1 through 2 of the Rabbinic Miscellany. Noyles, a short staple combing separated from the long wool fibers by Carden. Schmitz, a measure of 5 arshins. Bieber and Ural names the sorts of woolen cloth. Okay, so there's some context of the notes. Let's go ahead and jump into this. To the working men and women of the Thornton factory. Thornton factory. Thornton factory. Working men and women of the Thornton factory. November 6th and 7th should be memorable days for all of us. The weavers, by their solid resistance to the employer's pressure, have proved that at a difficult moment there are still people in our midst who can uphold our common interests as workers. That our worthy employers have not yet succeeded in turning us for all time into the miserable slaves of their bottomless purses. Let us then, comrades, stand firm and steadfast and carry on to the very end. Let us remember that we can improve our conditions only by our common and concerted efforts. Above all, comrades, don't fall into the trap so cunningly prepared for you by Messrs. Thornton. They reason as follows. There is a hitch now in disposing of our goods, so that if we keep to our previous working conditions, we shall not get the profits we got previously. And we are not ready to take anything less. So then, we'll have to tighten up on the workers, let them shoulder the cost of the bad prices in the market, but the job has to be done cleverly and not in any old way, so that the worker, in the simplicity of his mind, will not understand what sort of titbit we are preparing for him. If we tackle all of them at once, they will all rise up at once, and we shan't be able to handle them. So we shall first dupe those miserable weavers, and then the others won't get away. We are not accustomed to restrain ourselves in dealing with these creatures, and what for anyhow? New brooms sweep cleaner here, so then the employers who are so full of concern for the workers' well-being want to quietly and steadily impose on the workers of all departments what they have already imposed on the weavers. That is why, if we all remain indifferent to the fate of the weaving sheds, we shall dig with our own hands a pit into which we too shall soon be thrown. Latterly, the weavers have been earning in round figures 3 rubles, 50 kopecks, a fortnight, and during the same period families of 7 have contrived somehow to live on 5 rubles, and families consisting of husband, wife, and child on 2 rubles in all. They have sold the last of their clothes and used up the last. Coppers they earned by their hellish labor at a time when their benefactors, the Thorntons, were adding millions to the millions they already had. To crown it all ever, new victims of the employers' avarice have been thrown out on the streets before their eyes, and the pressure has been regularly increased with the most heartless cruelty. Without any explanation, they have started mixing noils and clippings with the wool, which slows the job down terribly. Delays in getting the warp have increased as though inadvertently. Finally, they have begun without ado to introduce short time, and now the pieces have to be 5 instead of 9 schmitts long, so that the weaver has to fuss around longer and oftener in obtaining and fixing the warps, for which, as is known, not a kopeck is paid. They want to wear our weavers down in the earnings of ruble 62 kopecks per fortnight, which have already begun to appear in the pay books of some of the weavers, may in the near future become general in the weaving sheds. Comrades, do you too want to see the day when you get this sort of kindness from the employers? If not, if finally your hearts have not entirely turned to stone in face of the suffering of poor folks like yourselves, rally solidly round our weavers. Let us put forward our common demands, and on every suitable occasion, let us wrest better conditions from our oppressors. Workers of the spinning sheds, don't delude yourselves about the stability and slight increase in your earnings. After all, almost 2/3 of your number have already been dismissed, and your better earnings have been purchased at the cost of the starvation of your own spinners, who have been thrown out of work. This again is a cunning trick of the employers, and is not difficult to understand if you only count how much was earned by the entire mule spinning department previously, and how much now workers of the new dyeing department, 12 rubles a month, all told is what you now earn, at the cost of 14 and 1/4 hours daily work, saturated from head to foot with the murderous fumes of dyes. Pay attention to our demands. We also want to end the illegal deductions made from you due to your foreman's inefficiency. Laborers and all skilled workers generally, do you really expect to retain your 60 SO kopecks a day? When the skilled weaver has to content himself with 20 kopecks a day. Comrades, don't be blind. Don't swallow the employer's bait. Stand up for one another more firmly. Otherwise, it will go badly for all of us this winter. We must all keep a most watchful eye on the employers. Maneuvers aimed at reducing rates, and with all our strength resist every tendency in this direction, for it spells ruin for us. Turn a deaf ear to all their pleadings about business being bad. For them, it only means less profit on their capital. For us, it means starvation and suffering for our families who are deprived of their last crust of stale bread. Can there be any comparison between the two things? They are now putting pressure on the weavers, first of all, and we must secure, 1, an increase in weavers' rates to their spring level, i.e. by about 60 kopecks per schmitz. 2, that the weavers too be brought under the law which says that the workers must be told how much he can earn on a job before he begins it. Let the rates list, bearing the factory inspector's signature, exist not only on paper, but in reality as required by law. For weaving, for example, the existing rates should be accompanied by information about the quality of the wool, the quantity of noils and clippings in it, and there should be an estimate of the time required for preparatory work. 3, that the working time be so distributed that we do not stand idle through no fault of our own. Now, for example, things are so arranged that on each piece of the weaver loses a day waiting for warp, and since the piece is becoming almost half its former size, the weaver will suffer a double loss, regardless of the rates list. If the boss wants to rifle our earnings this way, let him do so outright in such a manner that we definitely know what he wants to squeeze out of us. 4, that the factory inspector sees to it that there is no trickery about the rates, that there are no double rates. That means, for example, that the rates list should not contain 2 different rates for one and the same kind of article, only with different names. For example, we got 4 rubles, 32 kopecks a piece for weaving beaver, and only 4 rubles and 14 kopecks for Ural. Yet as far as work goes, isn't it one and the same thing? A still more impudent piece of trickery is the double price given for goods of one denomination. That way, Messrs. Thornton dodged the fines laws which state that a fine may only be imposed for such damage as results from the worker's carelessness, and that the deduction has to be recorded in his paybook under the headings fines, not later than 3 days after it is imposed. A strict record has to be kept of all the fines, the total sum of which is not to go to the employer's pocket, but must be used to cover the needs of the workers of the factory concerned. With us, however, we have but to look at our books. There are empty spaces, there are no fines, and one might think our employers are the most kind-hearted of all. Actually, however, due to our lack of knowledge, they dodge the law and easily fix things to suit themselves. We are not fined, you see, yet deductions are made from us, the smaller rate being paid as long as 2 rates have existed, a smaller and a bigger one. There has been nothing at all the cavil at. They have kept on deducting the money and putting it into their own pockets. 5. In addition to introducing a single rate, let each deduction be registered in the fines columns with an indication of why it is made. Then wrong finding will be obvious, less of our work will be done for nothing, and there will be a drop in the number of disgraceful things being done now. As for example, in the dyeing department where the workers' earnings are lower on account of the foreman's inefficiency, which cannot, according to law, be a reason for non-payment of labor. Since there can be no question here of the workers' carelessness, And haven't all of us had deductions for which we are not in the least to blame? 6. We demand that the payment we make for lodgings be on the pre-1891 level. That is to say, 1 ruble per person per month. Because our earnings being what they are, we positively have nothing to pay the 2 rubles with. And in any case, what for? For the filthy, smelly, crowded kennel, always in danger of fire. Don't forget, comrades, that all over St. Petersburg it is considered enough to pay a ruble a month, and that only our considerate bosses are not satisfied with that. So we must force them here, too, to cut down their greed in defending these demands, comrades. We are not rebelling at all. We are merely demanding that we be given what all the workers of other factories now enjoy by law. The return of what has been taken from us by those who placed all their hopes on our inability to uphold our own rights. Let us then show on this occasion that our benefactors are mistaken. Okay, so that was to the working men and women of the Thornton factory. It's one of Lenin's earliest writings. He writes some stuff to like his family members. I've seen letters like that. He's written other things too that are, where he talks about what, Marx writings, and it shows all the graphs, and it's kind of hard to read, if you're just reading to somebody. But this here, there's good to look at, but this is something you could actually read all the way through. And he wrote this to, some workers in a factory who were on strike. And this was after they finished their strike. He allowed this to move through, this pamphlet went around their workspace. Really inspiring. It's insane the history of labor and the science of labor and what can be done with labor is something that's what labor could be in our world is something that unfortunately not enough people are aware of. They haven't been open to the idea of what labor can be, what labor should be. They're very set in what labor's supposed to be in their head, what they think it is. Unfortunately, they haven't been exposed to the potential of one of the most necessary parts of humanity, and that's labor. It's just right behind oxygen and water and food. So, okay, yeah, this is it here. I'm gonna post this out. I'll be having some more readings coming soon. I haven't got to post in a week, but we're not just giving our opinions on things. We're also reading and understanding a true Marxist-Leninist perspective, along with just reading on different. Actually going in and reading and finding the research yourself, and whether that just be, reading Lenin's earliest, pamphlet size of a piece, then let it be that. All right, y'all. Make sure to like on Facebook, follow me on YouTube, Marxist Saw, Facebook Marxist Saw, Twitter's Marxist Saw. Make sure to go follow me on all that. TikTok Marxist Saw. I'm on TikTok now. If you've been seeing my TikTok videos. Okay, Todara Goi.